Hi everyone, happy Friday and welcome to another devotional. I'm continuing in Genesis and I'm still on the story of Abraham because a lot happens to him. So I wanted to talk to you guys today from Genesis chapter 17, and just to give some background or context, this is where God makes his covenant with Abraham and sets up the law of like circumcision and everything like that, and how everyone in his household needed to be circumcised. And it's also where Abram's name becomes Abraham. So that's just kind of what happens before what I'm about to read. I just wanted to give like context. I know that's kind of like a weird place to do a devotional from, but I promise it's going somewhere. So I'm going to start at verse 15 and I'm going to read until 21. And God said to Abraham, "As for Sarai your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. I will bless her, and moreover I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she shall become nations. Kings of peoples shall come from her." Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed, and said to himself, "Shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child?" And Abraham said to God, "Oh, that Ishmael might live before you." God said, "No, but Sarah your wife shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his offspring after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful and multiply him greatly. He shall father 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this time next year." Okay, so this is a story that we've all heard a million times about how Abraham and Sarah were super old, but God promised that they would give him a son. And we know that before this, Sarah kind of took things into her own hands and gave her servant Hagar to Abraham, and through her they had Ishmael, but that went completely against God's plan because they just decided to do things their own way, which never turns out good. But now God is saying that he told them that he was going to give them a son, and Ishmael was not whom he was talking about. He was going to give Sarah and Abraham a son, and so he's now promising them that this time next year they're going to have a son named Isaac. And as I was reading this, I've been trying to picture these things actually happening and it not just being words on a page. And so I'm picturing Abraham is talking to God, God, the God who created the universe, the God that created him, the God that could smite him on the spot if he wanted to. He's talking to God who has just given him his plan, who has changed his name, his wife's name, has promised this covenant to his family. And Abraham laughs in his face and is like, "I'm way too old. Sarah's way too old. This is never going to happen." And he just questions a promise that God has given him, and not a vague promise, a very specific promise. It's not like God's "Oh yeah, I'm going to bless you and great things are going to happen." He's like, "No, this time next year you will have a son and his name will be Isaac." He's being very specific, and Abraham's just "Nah, man, this isn't going to happen." And I realized in reading this through for the bajillionth time that he not only questions and laughs at God, but he gives God his own plan. He's like, "That's never going to work. Here's my idea." He's like, "Ishmael, I have this son Ishmael. Why can't it just be Ishmael? Why can't you just make your covenant with Ishmael?" And so he laughs in the face of God, doesn't believe his plan, and then gives God his own plan that he thinks is better. And then God's response is no. Just straight up no. And just reiterates, "No, Sarah, your wife, is going to have a child this time again next year." And you read these things and you're like, "What are you doing, Abraham? This is God. This is the guy who created everything. This is the number one, the top dog. What are you doing?" Questioning him, laughing in his face, and giving him other plans. You don't know what you're doing. And yet, how often do we do that? How often does God promise that he will prosper us, that he will bless us, that he has a plan for us? And we're like, do you though? Is it really going to be that good? And then we go, "Here's my idea of what I think will work best for my life." We do the exact same thing that Abraham does all the time. And the thing that I realize about Abraham here is that Ishmael is real to Abraham. Like, Ishmael has already been born and he already loves him, and it's this great thing that's happened to him. And so he doesn't understand how God could provide something better. And how often are we happy and comfortable with our lives the way that they are? And God says, there's something better for you. And we're like, but what we have is already pretty great. So like, how could you even do anything remotely better than this? But this is, again, God we're talking about here. He goes above and beyond our expectations. He gives us above and beyond everything that we can dream or imagine or hope for. And so Abraham, if things had have just stayed the way they were, like, he would have had Ishmael, which is like, okay, he's great, he's his son, he loves him, but he's not from Sarah. He's not from, like, he's not a part of God's original plan for them, when really God has this plan with Isaac that is so much better. But Abraham's little brain just can't fathom something better than Ishmael, who is already here, who he can already see and touch. And I realize that I do that all the time. Like, I think my life is so amazing and so great right now, which I'm so thankful for, that I can't imagine that God could do anything better. And so I don't put my trust in him, because I just want to hold on to all of these plans and ideas that I have, because I think that they're best for me, when God is like, those are peanuts compared to what I have planned for you. Like, just let me plan your life. And so he tells Abraham, no, you're going to have a son. His name is going to be Isaac. And I am going to continue my covenant that I've made with you with Isaac as well. And the nations that come from you will be blessed, and all the nations on earth will be blessed, because eventually Jesus would come from this line. And like, that's far beyond anything that Abraham probably ever imagined. But the part that I didn't read comes right after this. And I just think that it's interesting that even though Abraham had all these questions and he didn't understand and he didn't like fully trust God, he still went and obeyed him. Like, it says afterwards that God, when he was finished talking to him, left, and then Abraham immediately went and he circumcised all the men, all the males in his household. So even though he didn't understand fully God's plan, he was still obedient, and he was immediately obedient, which is just amazing. Like, even though he didn't get it, even though he didn't know what was going to happen and what the future was going to look like, he still obeyed God. And that's the thing, is that we're never going to fully understand what God is doing or what our future holds, but we have to put our trust and our hope in him, and by doing that, ultimately be obedient, so that he can bless us and he can continue with the plan that he has for our life, which is far better than anything that we could ever come up with. So Abraham's life has often reflected mine, especially when God told him he needed to move, and that was my experience as well. So I just find a lot of comfort in the fact that Abraham just didn't go, okay, and then move on. That's what we wish he would have done, but we're humans, we're imperfect. He misunderstood, he didn't understand, he questioned God, but he was still obedient, and God blessed him because of that. And so I need to remember that I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I know that God has a plan for me, and I have to trust that it is better than anything that I could imagine, and he can do way more than what's just happened so far, and what I can visually see and touch right now. He can still go far beyond and above that. So that is just my devotional today, continuing with Abraham. I hope it was an encouragement and a challenge to you guys, and I hope that you have a fantastic weekend. I hope to see you at the outdoor service on Sunday. Keep praying that we have great weather. It's going to be a lawn chair service, so make sure you check your email just for more information on that, and hopefully we will get to see you in person and worship together outside, which is going to be so awesome. So thanks for watching, and we will hopefully see you soon. Bye.